Olympic National Park is one of the few national parks in the United States that you can get to by public transportation. Your gateway town is Port Angeles, which you can get to from Seattle. In this video, I'll show you my exact timeline of going from Seattle by ferry to Bainbridge Island, and then from there, a bus to Port Angeles, and then onwards to the Olympic National Park Visitor Center upon arrival. Here, you can do a short hike on the trails through a lush green forest. Spend 2 nights in Port Angeles so you have a day dedicated to the Hurricane Ridge area in Olympic National Park where you can do some hiking and you might even see some wildlife like deer or an Olympic marmot. I saw deer along the trail as well as near the parking lot as I was waiting for the shuttle, and I also saw some marmots at the parking lot too, as well as along a trail. To go to the famous Olympic National Park rainforest and rugged coast, there are tours from Port Angeles. I have links in the description about that. Coming up, I'll show you how Seattle to Port Angeles went for me, but you can also visit my blog for how I did Olympic National Park without a car. For the route, just to map it out, you can go to Google Maps and select the public transportation option, but I do think it's a good idea to verify the ferry schedule and the bus schedule separately. So as part of a cruise from Japan to Alaska crossing the North Pacific Ocean, I arrived in Seattle by cruise ship. Once in Seattle, with the 7 a.m. disembarkation time, I was out of the cruise terminal at around 7:25 a.m. I used Google Maps to figure out what bus to take from the cruise port to downtown Seattle. Around 20 minutes after getting off the cruise ship, I was at the bus stop, and then the bus came shortly after that. Then in about 20 minutes, I was in downtown Seattle and walked the rest of the way to the ferry building, which was about a 10-minute walk. Then I followed the sign to the Washington State Ferries and Bainbridge Island. If you have an Orca card, then you can use that to pay for the ferry. Otherwise, you'll be looking out for the Washington State Ferry's ticket booth so that you can buy your ferry ticket. So from arriving at the ferry building to getting to the Bainbridge Island waiting area, it was another 5 minutes or so. And the boarding time was right before the departure time of 8:45 a.m. You can search for something like Seattle Bainbridge Island Ferry to get to the Washington State Department of Transportation website to look at the official ferry schedule. This is also where you can look for the current cost of the ferry ticket. So now here's boarding the ferry to Bainbridge Island. There are no assigned seats, so you're free to sit anywhere. And there are seats both inside and outside. So it was an on-time departure, which meant that I would arrive at Bainbridge Island in time to get the bus to Port Angeles that I was planning for. That was something that made me a little nervous because it seemed like it's not uncommon for ferries to be a little delayed. So I did prepare myself mentally in the case that there was a ferry delay that would cause me to miss the bus. That would just mean that I would have to wait a little extra longer for the next bus to Port Angeles. So it was like a 35 to 40 minute ferry ride. Then once you get off the ferry, you'll look for signs to the bus where there was a little inside waiting area with simple food that you could buy. So the bus came around and was ready for boarding around 10 minutes before the departure time of 10:20 a.m. There is a spot for luggage underneath the bus. To find the current bus schedule, you can search for something like Bainbridge Island Port Angeles bus or Straight Shot bus to get the Clallam Transit website. Once on the website, you'll scroll within the box in order to find the Port Angeles schedule. Scroll right to find the estimated time of arrival. The Gateway Transit Center is Port Angeles. And then if you scroll down, you'll find the weekend schedule, Saturday and Sunday. Then further down is more information, including the current bus fare and the bus not waiting for ferry delays. If you pay in cash, you need exact change. So it's a bus ride of around 2 hours to get from Bainbridge Island to Port Angeles. There is a toilet on board at the back of the bus as well as in the bus terminal waiting area. So once the bus arrives in Port Angeles, you'll grab your luggage from under the bus, and the bus does arrive right in town at the main bus terminal. After getting off the bus, I went to the Port Angeles Visitor Center, which was pretty much right at the bus stop, and they offered to hold luggage there for free, which I thought was pretty awesome, so I bought a Port Angeles t-shirt from their little shop. Then after dropping off luggage, I got on the local bus to go to the Olympic National Park Visitor Center in town. I used Google Maps to figure out which bus to take and where to get off. And this bus was free when I went, so this is also something you want to check before you go. Once on the bus, you'll want to pull the cord when your bus stop is next so you can let the bus driver know that you want to get off. So it's about a 10 to 15 minute walk from the bus stop to the Olympic National Park Visitor Center. If you're going to take the Hurricane Ridge shuttle, then you do need to buy a National Park entry pass before you go, which you can do so at the National Park Visitor Center. If you go to the National Park Service website, then you can also buy your Olympic National Park entry pass online. Even if you buy your pass online, I would go to the visitor center just to get your intro to Olympic National Park and the Pacific Northwest. You can pick up the paper, watch a short film, get your National Park passport stamp, and hike some short trails that are right outside the visitor center too. So I ended up spending around 1.5 hours in the Olympic National Park Visitor Center area, and then I took a bus back to the Port Angeles Visitor Center to pick up my luggage. The next day, I took the $1 Hurricane Ridge shuttle to go hiking in Olympic National Park. After 2 nights in Port Angeles, I took a ferry from Port Angeles to Victoria, Canada, the capital of the province of British Columbia, and the City of Gardens. And if you want to loop back to Seattle, there's also a ferry from Victoria to Seattle. On a previous trip, I took this ferry. Or you can also go by public transportation from Victoria to Vancouver. I've been to Seattle, Victoria, and Vancouver several times each, so be sure to check out the blog for things to do without a car in these cities. The blog is called My Perfect Alaska Cruise.